The luxury penthouse office of Pure Radiance Cosmetics felt more like a battleground than a boardroom. My mother-in-law, Catherine Wellington, sat at the head of the table in her signature Chanel suit, while her daughter Amanda perched beside her, both wearing identical expressions of smug superiority. The shareholders filled the remaining seats, watching the drama unfold like spectators at a gladiatorial match. My name is Dr. Rachel Kim, and this is the story of how my own revolutionary skincare formula became the weapon my mother-in-law tried to use to destroy me, and how her plan backfired spectacularly. As I was saying, Catherine continued, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing to the presentation screen. Pure Radiance needs to evolve. My daughter Amanda's new luxury skincare line, Wellington Beauty, will modernize our image and replace our existing products. By existing products, she meant my award-winning natural skincare line that had transformed Pure Radiance from a struggling local brand into a $50 million company. The same products that had earned me a feature in Forbes 30 Under 30 just last year. The market research is clear, Amanda chimed in, flipping her expertly highlighted hair. Consumers want luxury, exclusivity, dramatic results, not boring natural ingredients. I kept my expression neutral, thinking about the stack of FDA test results sitting in my private lab. Results that would turn their world upside down in exactly 6 days. 5 years ago, I joined Pure Radiance fresh from completing my PhD in biochemistry. My husband Michael, Catherine's son, had convinced his mother to give me a chance in their struggling research department. At the time, Pure Radiance was losing market share to newer, trendier brands. Just give her 6 months, Michael had pleaded. Her research in natural bioactive compounds is revolutionary. Catherine had agreed, though I later learned it was only because the company was weeks away from bankruptcy. She'd assumed I would fail, giving her an excuse to sell to a larger corporation. Instead, I developed something extraordinary. Working late nights in the lab, I created a formula using a unique combination of botanicals that could penetrate the skin's deeper layers, stimulating natural collagen production and cell renewal. The results were better than anything on the market, without the harsh chemicals other brands relied on. "Your 6 months are up," Catherine had said back then, walking into my lab one evening. "Show me what you've wasted our money on." I'd shown her the before and after photos from our preliminary trials. The reduction in wrinkles, the improved skin texture, the natural glow. Her eyes had widened, and for a moment, I'd seen past her polished facade to the shrewd businesswoman beneath. "How soon can we launch?" The next 2 years were a whirlwind. My natural skincare line, Pure Science, became Pure Radiance's flagship brand. Sales exploded. Our waitlist grew to months. Vogue called it the future of skincare. But success, I discovered, can make family dynamics very complicated. Catherine had tolerated me when I was just her son's wife with a cute little research project. But as Pure Science grew, as my name began appearing in beauty magazines and industry awards, something changed. Enter Amanda, my sister-in-law, returning from 5 years in Europe with sudden aspirations to join the family business. Despite having no scientific background or product development experience, she was immediately appointed as creative director. "We need to appeal to luxury consumers," she'd announce in meetings, dismissing years of market research. "Natural skincare is just a trend. We need something more exclusive." I'd watch quietly as she hired outside formulators, developed her miracle products, and positioned herself as the new face of Pure Radiance. Catherine supported every move, gradually pushing me out of decisions about my own product line. The whispers started small, questions about my research methods, suggestions that my formulas were outdated, meetings scheduled when I was teaching my guest lectures at the university. "It's just business," Michael would say, trying to keep peace in the family. Mom's always been competitive. But I knew it was more than that. I'd seen the rushed product development, the skipped safety trials, the ingredients being substituted to cut costs. I documented everything, waiting for the right moment. Then 3 months ago, I noticed something in Amanda's new formula that set off every scientific alarm bell I had. A compound that promised amazing results but hadn't been properly tested for long-term effects. Something that should never have passed initial safety screening. I quietly submitted samples to the FDA and independent labs while watching Amanda and Catherine push forward with their launch plans. They were so focused on pushing me out that they never questioned why I seemed to give up so easily. Rachel's development budget will be reallocated to Wellington Beauty, Catherine announced to the shareholders, pulling me back to the present. Her limited distribution channels will be used for Amanda's luxury line launch. I made a small note on my tablet. 11:45 a.m. CW announces intention to discontinue Pure Science line despite $50 million annual revenue. No safety data presented for new products. Amanda smirked in my direction. Don't worry, Rachel. We'll keep one or two of your products as our basic line for customers who can't afford real luxury skincare. I smiled back, thinking about the FDA report that would arrive in 6 days, about the independent lab tests confirming my suspicions, about the email I'd received that morning from the head of the FDA's Cosmetic Safety Division. Thank you for your concern, I said softly. I'm sure Wellington Beauty will be revealing. Catherine's eyes narrowed at my tone, but she continued outlining their plans to phase out my products. The shareholders listened, seduced by promises of higher margins and luxury pricing. What none of them knew was that I had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. Every rushed decision, every skipped safety test, every substituted ingredient, all meticulously documented. The FDA investigation was just the beginning. As I sat there, listening to them dismantle everything I'd built, I thought about the real reason I developed my skincare line. Not for profit or fame, but because I believed people deserved safe, effective products backed by real science. In 6 days, Catherine and Amanda would learn what happens when you prioritize greed over safety, when you mistake someone's quiet patience for weakness. Wednesday's FDA meeting was going to change everything, because sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't immediate retaliation. It's allowing people's own actions to reveal their true nature. And I had a feeling their miracle products were about to reveal quite a lot indeed. The FDA's regional office buzzed with unusual energy that Wednesday morning. Beauty industry reporters clustered in the lobby, drawn by rumors of significant safety concerns about a major cosmetics launch. I spotted Catherine and Amanda arriving, their usual confidence slightly strained around the edges. "What is this about?" Catherine demanded as I walked past. "Why are we being summoned like common manufacturers?" I adjusted my lab coat, making sure my FDA consultant badge was visible. "I believe Dr. Martinez will explain everything." The conference room was already full when we entered. FDA officials lined one side of the table, their expressions serious. Representatives from the Consumer Safety Board and the American Society for Dermatological Research filled the other seats. At the head of the table sat Dr. Elena Martinez, the FDA's Chief Cosmetic Safety Officer. "Mrs. Wellington," Dr. Martinez began, "we've called this meeting to discuss serious concerns about your company's new product line, Wellington Beauty, specifically the compound WB254 in your anti-aging serum." Amanda shifted nervously. "That's our proprietary formula, which was never properly tested for long-term dermal impact," I interrupted, opening my laptop. "Allow me to present our findings." For the next hour, I laid out the evidence. The rushed safety trials, the manipulated test results, the dangerous compounds that had been substituted to cut costs. "This molecular structure," I explained, displaying a complex diagram, "is remarkably similar to a compound that was banned in Europe last year after causing severe dermal reactions. However, Wellington Beauty's formulators made one small change and declared it a new compound." Catherine's face had gone pale. "You have no right to our proprietary information." "Actually," Dr. Martinez interjected, "Dr. Kim has been working with us as an FDA scientific consultant for the past 3 months. Her concerns about consumer safety triggered a full investigation." I clicked to the next slide. Photos from our long-term testing. These are the results after 60 days of use. Notice the cellular degradation, the compromised skin barrier, the potential for permanent damage. The room fell silent as the images appeared. Even Amanda looked shaken. "But our trials showed amazing results," she protested weakly. "Your 6-week trials, yes," I agreed. "The compound creates an immediate pumping effect by irritating the skin. Users see quick results, but after 2 months, I displayed more photos. The damage begins." Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "Mrs. Wellington, did you knowingly attempt to circumvent FDA safety protocols?" "Of course not," Catherine snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. "We followed all required procedures." "Really?" I pulled up internal emails I'd archived before being pushed out of research and development. Here's a message ordering formulators to expedite testing. Here's another demanding they find alternatives to expensive safety trials. The evidence was damning. Years of corners cut, regulations sidestepped, warnings ignored, all in pursuit of profit. Pure Radiance has two options, Dr. Martinez announced. Immediate recall of all Wellington Beauty products and full cooperation with our investigation, or we begin criminal proceedings for willful endangerment of consumer safety. Catherine's carefully maintained facade cracked. You planned this, she hissed at me. You've been plotting to destroy us. No, I said quietly. I've been protecting people from dangerous products. It's what I've always done. The next few hours were a blur of legal discussions and regulatory requirements. Pure Radiance's stock plunged as news of the FDA intervention spread. By evening, Catherine and Amanda had been suspended by the board pending investigation. But the real surprise came the next morning. The board has voted unanimously, announced Jonathan Chen, our lead director. Dr. Kim will assume the role of CEO, effective immediately. Her commitment to product safety and scientific integrity is exactly what Pure Radiance needs to rebuild trust. I thought about declining, about walking away from the family drama. But then I remembered why I'd started this journey, not for power or revenge, but to create safe, effective skincare backed by real science. The transformation of Pure Radiance took time. We pulled all Wellington Beauty products before they could harm anyone. My original Pure Science line became our focus again, expanded with new formulations that underwent rigorous safety testing. Catherine and Amanda faced their own reckonings. The FDA investigation led to significant fines and a ban from serving in any cosmetics company leadership for 5 years. The last I heard, they'd moved to Europe, trying to rebuild their reputations. Michael and I had our own challenges to work through. He'd been caught between loyalty to his mother and support for his wife, but ultimately stood by my decision to prioritize consumer safety over family politics. You know what amazes me? He said one evening as we reviewed plans for our new research facility. Mom and Amanda were so focused on luxury and exclusivity that they forgot what really matters in skincare, making products that actually help people. A year later, I stood in my old lab, now expanded into a state-of-the-art research center. The walls displayed our patents and safety certifications. Young scientists worked at pristine benches, developing new formulations under the strictest safety protocols. Pure Radiance had emerged stronger, our commitment to scientific integrity rebuilding consumer trust. The company was now worth $200 million. But more importantly, we were setting new standards for safety in the beauty industry. Sometimes I think about that boardroom meeting, about Catherine and Amanda's smug certainty as they tried to push me aside. They'd seen my quiet focus on research as weakness, my insistence on safety protocols as lack of business acumen. They never understood that in the beauty industry, true success comes from something more fundamental than luxury packaging or marketing hype. It comes from creating products that actually work, that help people feel confident in their own skin, safely. As I walk through our labs now, watching young researchers develop new formulations with the same passion for science that drove me, I think about how different things could have been. If Catherine and Amanda had channeled their ambition into creating safe, effective products instead of chasing quick profits, we might have built something remarkable together. But sometimes the most valuable lessons come from watching others' mistakes. Their betrayal taught me that in the end, integrity isn't just about doing what's right. It's about creating something that lasts. Because real beauty isn't about quick fixes or miracle promises, it's about patience, science, and an unwavering commitment to helping people feel naturally beautiful. And that's a formula no amount of luxury marketing can replicate. Some people say revenge is best served cold. I discovered it's best served with a mop and bucket. My name is Michael Chen, and until last month, I was the Chief Innovation Officer at Chen Global Solutions, a software development company my father built from nothing. Now I'm the night janitor. At least that's what my Uncle Robert thinks. The day everything fell apart started like any other Monday at our Singapore headquarters. I was presenting my latest project to the board, a revolutionary AI system that could transform how multinational corporations handle supply chain management. The preliminary tests show a 40% improvement in efficiency, I explained, pointing to the graphs on the screen. We're looking at potential revenue of $50 million in the first year alone. Uncle Robert, who'd taken over as CEO after my father's stroke last year, scrolled through his phone with obvious boredom. Fascinating, he drawled. But I think we'll pass. I stopped mid-sentence. Pass? This could revolutionize our entire industry. It could, he agreed, finally looking up. If it worked. But your track record lately hasn't inspired much confidence. That was a lie, and everyone knew it. My innovations had doubled company revenue in 3 years. But the board members, all Uncle Robert's old friends, nodded along like puppets. The Jean contract, he continued, was sabotaged. I cut in. Someone altered the code right before deployment. If he'd let me investigate. Enough. Uncle Robert stood, his expensive suit rippling with barely contained anger. Your paranoid accusations are embarrassing this company. First the Jean contract, then the Singapore government bid, now this fantasy AI project. It's time for a change. He picked up a folder from the table and tossed it at me. Inside was a transfer notice, from Chief Innovation Officer to Night Maintenance Staff. You want to make me a janitor? I couldn't believe what I was reading. Consider it a learning opportunity, he smirked. Clean the office instead of running it. Maybe some manual labor will teach you humility. The board members didn't even try to hide their amusement. These men who'd watched me grow up, who'd celebrated my graduation from MIT, who'd applauded my early successes, now they sat there grinning as my uncle stripped away everything I built. I should have been angry, should have shouted, threatened legal action, stormed out. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm. Because in that moment, everything finally made sense. The mysterious code changes, the lost contracts, the accidental deletion of my research files. It hadn't been bad luck. It had been sabotage. And now I knew who was behind it. When do I start? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Uncle Robert blinked, clearly expecting more resistance. Tonight, Wine will show you the cleaning supplies. He laughed. Don't forget to empty my trash. I gathered my papers quietly, ignoring the snickers from the board members. As I reached the door, Uncle Robert called out, "Oh, and Michael? The Yamamoto meeting is tomorrow morning. Make sure my office is spotless. Wouldn't want our $50 million potential client to see any dirt." I turned back slowly. The Yamamoto group? They're coming here? Not that it's any of your concern anymore, but yes. Mr. Yamamoto himself is flying in to discuss implementing their new global supply chain system. His smile was pure poison. The very project you failed to deliver. I nodded and left without another word. They probably thought I was broken, defeated. They had no idea what they'd just done. You see, being CIO wasn't my only role at Chen Global. I've been learning the business from the ground up since I was a teenager. I knew every system, every protocol, every security weakness. And more importantly, I knew where my uncle had buried his digital skeletons. That night, after the regular cleaning staff left, I sat in my old office, now stripped of personal belongings, and powered up my laptop. The janitor's ID badge my uncle had so gleefully handed me turned out to be a master key to the entire building, including the server rooms. Time to do some cleaning, I muttered, cracking my knuckles. For 6 hours, I dug through server logs, security footage, and email archives. I found exactly what I expected: systematic sabotage of my projects, backdoor changes to my code, deliberate interference with my contracts, all traced back to one IP address, Uncle Robert's private terminal. But that wasn't all I found. Hidden in an encrypted folder was a complete record of my uncle's secret negotiations with the Yamamoto Group. He wasn't planning to implement their supply chain system. He was planning to sell them a stolen version of my AI project, modified just enough to hide its origins. The same project he'd rejected that morning. The same project that could revolutionize global supply chain management. The same project he'd been secretly copying for months while systematically destroying my reputation. I downloaded everything to a secure drive, then carefully erased my digital tracks. Uncle Robert thought he was clever with computers. He had no idea what a real tech expert could do. Dawn was breaking as I finished my janitorial duties. I cleaned the offices, all right, just not in the way Uncle Robert expected. At 8:45 a.m., I changed into the spare suit I kept in my gym locker and made my way to the lobby. Through the glass doors, I could see an expensive car pulling up. Mr. Yamamoto had arrived. I straightened my tie and thought about Uncle Robert, probably rehearsing his presentation upstairs. He thought he'd sideline me, thought he'd neutralize the threat to his plans. He thought wrong. I'd spent the night gathering digital dirt, and now it was time to do some cleaning that would shake Chin Global Solutions to its foundations. "Good morning, Mr. Yamamoto," I said in perfect Japanese as the elderly businessman entered. "I'm Michael Chen. We have a lot to discuss of supply chain innovation and corporate integrity." Uncle Robert had no idea that I'd met Mr. Yamamoto at a tech conference last year. No idea that we'd stayed in touch, discussing industry trends and innovation. No idea that I spoke Japanese. No idea that his perfect plan was about to explode in his face. The security camera caught his expression when he stepped out of the elevator and saw me sitting with Mr. Yamamoto in the conference room. It was a picture worth framing, right next to the doctored maintenance badge he'd given me. Sometimes the best way to clean house is to let people think you're just there to empty the trash. Uncle Robert was about to learn that some messes can't be swept under the rug. Impossible. Uncle Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of purple as he burst into the conference room. "Michael, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be, that is, you're not authorized to clean?" I smiled, switching to English. "Don't worry, Uncle. I did exactly what you asked. I spent all night cleaning the servers, the email archives, the security logs. Very illuminating work." Mr. Yamamoto watched this exchange with keen interest, his expression carefully neutral. Beside him, his chief technology officer was already reviewing the documents I provided. "Mr. Yamamoto." Uncle Robert tried to recover, straightening his tie. "I apologize for this interruption. My nephew is no longer involved in company operations." "On the contrary," Mr. Yamamoto replied in perfect English. "Michael-san and I were just discussing some fascinating innovations in supply chain management. Perhaps you could explain why the system you offered us bears such a remarkable resemblance to his original work." The blood drained from Uncle Robert's face. On the conference room screen, I pulled up side-by-side comparisons. My original AI code and the new system Uncle Robert had planned to sell to Yamamoto Group. "As you can see," I continued, "the core architecture is identical. Only the interface has been modified, rather clumsily, I might add. The timestamps on the original code predate any of your negotiations by months." "This is absurd," Uncle Robert sputtered. "You were fired." "Demoted," I corrected, "to janitor, which gave me access to every floor, every office, and every server room in the building. Did you really think I wouldn't find the evidence of your sabotage?" The CTO looked up from his tablet. "This code, it's brilliant. The neural network adaptation protocols alone are years ahead of anything else in the market. That's why my uncle wanted to steal it," I said quietly, "after systematically sabotaging my other projects to undermine my credibility." Mr. Yamamoto's eyes narrowed. "Is this true, Robert-san?" Before Uncle Robert could respond, the conference room door opened again. My father, Thomas Chen, rolled in his wheelchair, accompanied by his nurse and our company's head of legal. "Dad?" Uncle Robert's voice cracked. "You're supposed to be resting." "I've rested enough," my father said, his voice still strong despite his weakened condition. "Long enough to watch you try to destroy everything I built." He turned to Mr. Yamamoto and bowed as much as his wheelchair allowed. "Yamamoto-san, I apologize for my brother's actions. It seems I placed my trust unwisely." "No apology needed, old friend," Mr. Yamamoto replied warmly. "Your son has already demonstrated that Chen Global's integrity remains intact, at least in the next generation." The head of legal stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the table. "The board has been called for an emergency session. Given the evidence of corporate espionage and intellectual property theft, they'll be voting on immediate leadership changes." "You can't do this," Uncle Robert protested. "I'm CEO." "Actually," my father said, "you're suspended, effective immediately. The stroke may have weakened my body, Robert, but my mind is clear enough to recognize betrayal." Security arrived to escort Uncle Robert out. As he passed me, he hissed, "You planned this all along." "No," I replied, "you did. The moment you decided that stealing my work was easier than acknowledging its value. I just cleaned up your mess." After he was gone, Mr. Yamamoto turned to me. "Your AI system, the real one. How soon could it be implemented?" The core architecture is ready. With proper support, we could have it running within 3 months. He nodded. Instead of $50 million, I propose a $100 million initial investment with option for global implementation, provided, he glanced at my father, the right person is in charge of development. My father smiled. I believe we need a new CEO. Someone who understands both innovation and integrity. He reached for my hand. What do you say, son? 6 months later, I stood in my new office, the CEO's office, looking out over the Singapore skyline. Chen Global's stock had doubled since the announcement of our partnership with Yamamoto Group. The AI system was revolutionizing supply chain management across 3 continents. Uncle Robert had tried to fight back, of course. But the evidence was overwhelming. Last I heard, he was trying to start a consulting firm in Malaysia. Not many clients were interested in consulting with a proven corporate thief. The board members who had laughed at my demotion had all resigned, replaced by tech industry veterans who understood the value of innovation. My father, while still partially paralyzed, had regained enough strength to serve as chairman emeritus, providing wisdom and guidance as we expanded into new markets. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. The night janitor, a real one this time, smiled as he entered. Evening, Mr. Chen. Just here to clean up. Thanks, Eddie, and please call me Michael. I helped him move some papers so he could dust my desk. How's your daughter doing with those programming classes? His face lit up. One of my first acts as CEO had been to establish an education fund for employees and their families. Eddie's daughter had a natural talent for coding. Top of her class. She's already talking about internships. Tell her to come see me when she's ready. We're always looking for fresh talent. After he left, I picked up a framed photo from my desk. Me at age 10, sitting on my father's lap at his old desk, playing CEO. He'd always said leadership wasn't about power, it was about responsibility, about lifting others up instead of pushing them down. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Yamamoto. Their European division wanted to implement our AI system. Another $100 million contract waiting to be signed. Not bad for a janitor. I kept the maintenance badge Uncle Robert had given me. It sits in a frame on my wall, next to my MIT diploma and CDO appointment letter. A reminder that sometimes the best view of a company's true character comes from the ground up. The next morning, I held my first company-wide innovation summit. Every employee, from senior developers to maintenance staff, was invited to share ideas for improvement. Real innovation, I've learned, can come from anywhere. And every evening when I leave the office, I make a point to thank our cleaning staff. Because now I know exactly how much power lies in having a clear view of what others try to hide. They say success is the best revenge, but I've learned that true success isn't about getting even. It's about getting it right. About building something so strong, so honest, that no amount of sabotage can bring it down. Uncle Robert tried to make me feel small by making me a janitor. Instead, he gave me the tools to clean up our company and restore its integrity. Sometimes the best way to lead isn't from the top down, but from the ground up. And sometimes the person with the mop knows more about keeping things clean than the person behind the desk. As for me, I still keep a spare suit in my office. You never know when you might need to roll up your sleeves and do some cleaning. Another year wasting away in that basement lab? Patricia Morrison's voice carried across the hospital's elegant ballroom, making several heads turn. Really, Emma, when are you going to start practicing real medicine? I smoothed my simple black dress, the one my mother-in-law had once dismissed as too academic, and maintained my composure. The annual St. Mary's Hospital fundraising gala had become an exercise in restraint since I married into the Morrison medical dynasty 5 years ago. My research is medicine, Patricia, I replied calmly. The work we're doing on autoimmune disorders is a waste of hospital resources, she cut in, diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively. How many patients have you actually treated this year? How many lives have you actually saved? If she only knew about the clinical trials we completed last month, about the results that would be announced tomorrow at the Nobel Committee's press conference in Stockholm. Leave her alone, mother, my husband Michael interrupted, though his voice wavered slightly. The Morrisons had that effect on people, even their own son. 3 generations of celebrated surgeons had taught them how to weaponize disappointment. We're just concerned Richard Morrison, my father-in-law, joined us. His bow tie probably cost more than a month's salary for my research assistants. Emma's brilliant. She graduated top of her class at Johns Hopkins. She could be running the surgical department by now, instead of hiding in a laboratory. I thought about the sealed envelope in my office safe, the one containing tomorrow's announcement that would shake the medical world. 5 years of research, hundreds of failed experiments, and finally, a breakthrough that would change how we treat autoimmune diseases forever. Sometimes the most important medical advances happen in laboratories, I said quietly, not operating rooms. Advances? Patricia scoffed. Like that failed trial last year. How much donor money did that waste? That failed trial had been a carefully orchestrated deception. We needed to protect our research until the patents were secured, until we were sure the treatment was safe. The Morrison family's hunger for quick results and publicity would have rushed things, potentially putting patients at risk. Speaking of donor money, Richard interjected, the board is reviewing research funding allocations next week. Given your limited results, perhaps it's time to consider a different direction. And there it was. The real reason for this public humiliation. The Morrisons didn't just want me in surgery, they wanted my lab's funding and space for their new elective surgery center. I appreciate your concern, I said, taking a sip of champagne, but our current projects are fully funded through external grants. External grants? Patricia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. From whom? Every major medical foundation in the country is on our board. I smiled, thinking of the private funding that had kept our research going when the Morrisons tried to shut us down. There are other sources of research funding, Patricia. Not everyone needs their name on a hospital wing. Michael shifted uncomfortably beside me. He knew some of the truth. He was one of only 3 people who did. We kept the breakthrough secret for months, watching and waiting for the perfect moment. Well, Richard's voice had a dangerous edge. As chief of surgery, I might need to review your lab's space allocation. The new surgical center needs that basement level. I thought about my meeting last week with the Nobel Committee, how they'd verified every detail of our research, how they'd been stunned by the success rates in our clinical trials. Everything in the lab is exactly where it needs to be, I replied. But thank you for your interest in our work. Patricia's hand gripped my arm, her manicured nails digging slightly. Don't be difficult, dear. The Morrison Surgical Center will help far more patients than your little experiments ever could. The Morrison Surgical Center, their planned temple to profitable elective procedures, built on the ashes of my research lab. If they only knew what we'd achieved in that basement. Time will tell, I said softly, checking my watch. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an early conference call tomorrow. With other researchers. Patricia's laugh was like breaking crystal, comparing notes on failed experiments. Something like that. I kissed Michael's cheek, ignoring Patricia's disapproving glare at this public display of affection. Good night, everyone. Lovely gala as always. As I walked to my car, Dr. Sanders, the hospital's senior researcher, fell into step beside me. They still don't know, do they? He asked quietly. He was one of the few who understood what we'd accomplished. They'll find out tomorrow, I replied, unlocking my Tesla. Bought with the advance from our pharmaceutical patent. Not Morrison money, along with everyone else. In my lab that night, I reviewed everything one final time. 5 years of research data, clinical trials conducted quietly at partner hospitals, patients whose lives had been transformed by our treatment. The Morrisons thought I'd spent those years playing with test tubes. Instead, I developed a cure that would revolutionize medicine. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Zhang at the WHO. Final review complete. Press packages ready. You're sure about tomorrow's announcement? I thought about Patricia's mocking laugh, Richard's thinly veiled threats, the years of watching them prioritize profit over patient care. I'm sure, I typed back. Everything's ready. The next message was from Dr. Sarah Chen, my research partner who was already in Stockholm. Auditoriums prepared. Media's assembled. They have no idea what's coming. I smiled, remembering Richard's dismissal of our little experiments. He had no idea that tomorrow's announcement would make his surgical center look like a medieval practice. Looking at the lab equipment that had become my second home, I thought about the day Richard Morrison had first shown me this basement space. "He can play scientist down here," he'd said condescendingly, "as long as you don't interfere with real medical work upstairs." Well, I'd done more than play scientist. I'd changed the future of medicine. And tomorrow, the Morrison family would learn that some doctors save lives not by wielding scalpels, but by quietly revolutionizing medical science itself. The St. Mary's Hospital conference room buzzed with nervous energy at 8:45 a.m. The entire medical staff had been summoned for an urgent announcement, something about a live broadcast from Stockholm. In the front row, Patricia Morrison whispered furiously to her husband. "What's this about, Richard? Why wasn't the board informed?" Richard Morrison's face was tight with barely controlled anger. "I don't know, but if this interrupts surgical schedules." "Good morning, everyone. I walked in wearing my lab coat rather than surgical scrubs. Thank you for joining us on such short notice." "Dr. Chen." Richard's voice carried genuine surprise. "What is the meaning of this? I have 3 surgeries scheduled." "They've been covered," I interrupted smoothly. "Dr. Williams will handle your procedures today. This announcement takes priority." The massive screen behind me flickered to life, showing the grand hall of the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. The Nobel Committee members were seated at their traditional table, cameras flashing. "What's going on?" Patricia demanded, but her voice held a note of uncertainty I'd never heard before. "Please everyone take your seats," I said calmly. "The announcement is about to begin." The committee chairman's voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Today, we announce the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology for groundbreaking work in autoimmune disease treatment." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand gripped Richard's arm as my name appeared on the screen, along with details of our research. "For the development of targeted immune system reprogramming, a revolutionary treatment that effectively cures multiple autoimmune conditions." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Richard's face had gone from red to white. On screen, Dr. Sarah Chen, my research partner, was already at the podium in Stockholm. "This breakthrough," she was saying, "represents 5 years of dedicated research. Using a novel approach to cellular reprogramming, we've developed a treatment that success rate exceeds 94% in clinical trials." "Impossible," Richard whispered. "The trials failed last year." "The public trials failed," I corrected him gently. "The real trials conducted at partner hospitals worldwide succeeded beyond our highest expectations." The presentation continued, showing before and after scans, patient testimonials, peer reviews from the world's top medical journals. With each slide, the Morrison family's empire of traditional treatments became more obsolete. "Your research budget," Patricia managed, her voice shaking. "The failed experiments were a cover," I confirmed. "We needed to protect our work until it was ready, until it was safe. Unlike some, we prioritize patient safety over quick profits." Dr. Williams, the chief of internal medicine, stood up. "The hospital board will need to review this immediately. This changes everything about how we treat autoimmune conditions." "The patents and treatment protocols have already been secured," I explained. "And yes, St. Mary's will be one of the primary treatment centers, though perhaps not in a basement lab." The screens showed the global impact projections. Millions of patients who could now be cured rather than merely treated. The pharmaceutical partnership details appeared next. Billions in research funding, licensing agreements, and most importantly, provisions ensuring the treatment would be accessible to all patients, not just the wealthy. "You went around us," Richard finally found his voice. "Use our hospital's resources." "Actually, I cut in. We used private funding. Every piece of equipment, every trial, every research hour was paid for through independent grants. The only resource we used was space, that basement lab you were so eager to turn into a surgical center." The room had filled with more staff, nurses, technicians, administrators, all watching their hospital become the center of medical history. Patricia's face shifted from shock to calculation. "Well," she said, attempting to regain control, "naturally, as a Morrison family hospital, we'll want to be at the forefront of implementing this treatment. St. Mary's will certainly be involved," I agreed, "though its name might be changing. The WHO has suggested naming the treatment center after Dr. Helen Chen, my mother." "Your mother?" Patricia's voice rose an octave. "The Chinese immigrant who worked as a lab technician. The brilliant researcher who inspired my work," I corrected firmly, "who taught me that true medicine isn't about prestige or profit, it's about helping people." The next few hours were chaos. International media descended on the hospital. Medical journals requested interviews, and through it all, the Morrisons watched their surgical empire become secondary to the revolutionary treatment they dismissed as playing with test tubes. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated Chen Medical Research Center, formerly the basement lab. The space now occupied 3 floors with state-of-the-art equipment and a team of dedicated researchers. Michael found me there, reviewing data from our latest trials. Our marriage had survived the revelation, though family dinners were considerably quieter now. Moms were decorating their house, he reported with a slight smile. Apparently having a Nobel laureate for a daughter-in-law requires a more intellectual aesthetic. I laughed, looking at the framed photos on my wall, not of surgeries or hospital wings, but of patients who'd been cured. How's your father handling the change? Still adjusting to the fact that his surgical center's been repurposed as a research facility. Though he did finally read your paper, actually seemed impressed. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from researchers worldwide. Building on our breakthrough to develop new treatments, Patricia had stopped offering advice about real medicine, though she still occasionally suggested I dress more appropriately for a Nobel laureate. Dr. Sarah Chen called from our new lab in Singapore. Phase 2 trials showing even better results. The cellular regeneration rates are unprecedented. I smiled, thinking of all those gala dinners where they'd mocked my dedication to research. Send me the data. Let's see if we can improve those numbers even further. Life has a way of teaching you that value isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes it's buried deep, like the rare earth minerals that would soon turn my worthless beachfront property into the center of a multi-million-dollar battle. My name is Catherine Mitchell, and until 3 months ago, I was happily married to James Harrison, son of the influential Margaret Harrison, real estate mogul and self-proclaimed business genius. When James died suddenly of a heart attack at 35, I learned just how quickly family ties can unravel when property and money are involved. The old beach house had been my sanctuary since James bought it 7 years ago. While Margaret sneered at its weathered shingles and creaking floorboards, calling it a worthless investment, James and I saw its potential. What his mother didn't know, what no one knew except James and me, was why we'd really bought this particular stretch of beach. Mrs. Harrison is here, Maria, my housekeeper, announced on that fateful Thursday morning. I was in James's study, reviewing the geological surveys he'd left behind, trying to make sense of the technical jargon about mineral deposits and extraction rights. Margaret Harrison swept in like a cold front, designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Behind her trailed her ever-present lawyer, Alan Peterson, and my brother-in-law Robert, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. Catherine, Margaret's voice could have frozen seawater. We need to discuss the property situation. I carefully closed the geological report. What property situation, Margaret? She settled into James's leather chair without invitation. This dwelling. She glanced around with poorly concealed disgust. The family has decided it's time to consolidate assets. The beach house was purchased with Harrison money, after all. James purchased this house, I corrected quietly, with his own money. I have the documentation. Money he earned working for the family company. Robert interjected, finally finding his voice. Technically, it's Harrison property. I thought about the safe behind James's desk, about the real reason we'd chosen this particular piece of worthless beachfront, about the geological surveys that had confirmed what James had suspected when he first heard rumors about rare earth deposits along this stretch of coastline. The house is in my name, I said, keeping my voice level. James made sure of that. Margaret's smile was a slash of red lipstick. Did he? Alan, show her. The lawyer produced a document with practiced flourish. This contract, signed by James 3 years ago, clearly states that all property purchased with income from Harrison Developments remains under company control. I never saw this contract, I said, scanning the papers. The signature looked wrong, too perfect, too precise. Why would you? You were just the wife. Margaret stood, smoothing her channel suit. We're being generous, Catherine. Take your personal belongings and leave. The house goes back to the family, where it belongs. You can't just. We already have. Robert cut in. The locks have been changed. Security will arrive within the hour. I looked between them, Margaret's triumphant smirk, Robert's guilty avoidance, Alan's professional detachment. They had no idea what they were really fighting for. No clue about the true value hidden beneath this worthless beach house. "I'll need time to pack," I said, letting defeat color my tone. "You have 1 hour," Margaret declared. "Really, Catherine, it's better this way. What would you do with this dump anyway? The maintenance alone would bankrupt you." I gathered some clothes, photos, and a few precious mementos, making a show of fighting back tears. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was just another grieving widow being pushed out of her home. What they didn't see was the USB drive I slipped into my pocket, the one containing all of James's research, all the geological data, all the proof that this stretch of beach contained one of the largest deposits of rare earth minerals on the East Coast. The mining rights alone were worth millions. "One more thing," I said at the door, turning to Margaret. "James would have wanted me to tell you, sometimes value isn't obvious at first glance." She waved me away dismissively. "Spare me the sentimental drivel. Just be grateful we're not contesting the life insurance." I drove away slowly, watching in my rearview mirror as Robert directed the security team to take up positions around my beloved beach house. In my bag, nestled between old photos and worn sweaters, was something else they hadn't thought to look for: the original deed to the property with an interesting addendum about mineral and mining rights that James had insisted on including. My phone buzzed. A message from Thomas Chen, the mining company executive James had been secretly meeting with before his death. Documents received. Moving forward with claim tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. meeting still on? I smiled, typing back a simple yes. Then I called my lawyer, Sarah Martinez, who had been waiting for this moment. "They took the bait," I told her. "Everything exactly as James predicted. Are the papers ready?" "All set," she confirmed. "The mining company's legal team will file first thing tomorrow." Want to bet how long it takes Margaret Harrison to realize what she just stole? I checked my watch. In less than 24 hours, Margaret would learn that the worthless beach house she just seized sat on top of minerals worth more than her entire real estate empire. And thanks to James's careful planning, the mining rights belonged solely to me. "See you at 9, I said, ending the call. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back. It's letting your enemies think they've won, right before they discover what they've really lost. The next morning, I arrived at the offices of Martinez and Associates dressed for battle in a crisp charcoal suit, one of many things Margaret had criticized as trying too hard to fit in with real business people. The conference room already held an impressive gathering. Thomas Chen and his mining company executives, Sarah Martinez and her legal team, and 2 geological experts with decades of experience in rare earth mineral extraction. At exactly 9:15 a.m., my phone lit up with the first of what would become a storm of calls from the Harrison family. I smiled, imagining the scene playing out at their offices. "Ms. Mitchell," Thomas Chen began, spreading out detailed geological maps, "everything is proceeding as your late husband arranged. The mining rights claim has been filed, and our preliminary surveys confirm his initial findings. The rare earth deposits under your property are even more extensive than we initially believed." Sarah Martinez checked her watch. "The claim will be public record in about now." My phone buzzed again. Margaret's third call in 5 minutes. This time, I answered on speaker. "What have you done?" Margaret's voice trembled with rage. "Do you have any idea what just crossed my desk?" "Good morning, Margaret. I trust you've had time to review the property's mineral rights documentation." "This is impossible," she sputtered. "These claims, these surveys. James would have told us." "Would he?" I kept my voice calm. "The same way you told him about that convenient contract you used to seize our house? The one with the suspiciously perfect signature." Silence crackled over the line. "Catherine," her tone shifted to honey persuasion. "Clearly we should discuss this as a family. This situation with the house. Perhaps we were hasty. You mean when you changed the locks and gave me an hour to leave my home?" I looked around the conference room, meeting the supportive gazes of my team. "I'm in a meeting right now, Margaret. My lawyers and the mining company executives require my full attention." "Mining company?" Her voice rose an octave. "You can't negotiate without us. The house belongs to Harrison Developments now." "The house does," I agreed, "but not the mineral rights. James was very careful about that when we purchased the property. Check the original deed, specifically the addendum about subsurface rights." "Oh wait." I paused for effect. You can't check it because I have the only copy, the one you didn't think to ask for when you were so busy throwing me out. The sound of papers shuffling came through the speaker, followed by muffled cursing. Robert. Margaret's voice moved away from the phone. Find Alan immediately. Sarah Martinez nodded to her assistant, who pulled up a document on the conference room screen. Mrs. Harrison, since you're on the line, you should know we're about to file an injunction. Your company now owns a lovely beach house, but any attempt to interfere with the mineral rights or mining operations will result in immediate legal action. The minerals under that property are worth millions. Margaret's composure finally shattered. You can't just. Current market estimates put the value closer to $300 million. Thomas Chen interjected. Conservative estimate, of course. Could be significantly higher once full extraction begins. I heard something that sounded suspiciously like a crystal tumbler shattering against a wall. Margaret, I said quietly. James always said you taught him his most valuable business lesson. Never judge an investment by its surface appearance. He spent 2 years researching these mineral deposits before we bought that worthless beach house. Every time you mocked our choice, every time you called it a dump, we knew what was really under our feet. Why didn't he tell us? Robert's voice came through faintly. Because he knew you too well, I answered. Knew you tried to take control, just like you took everything else. So he made sure I would be protected. The house might belong to Harrison Developments now. But the real value, the minerals, the mining rights, the extraction contracts, all of that belongs to me. We can negotiate. Margaret's business voice was back. Surely we can reach some arrangement. Actually, we can't. I've already signed an exclusive contract with Chen Mining. They're handling all negotiations and operations. I nodded to Thomas, who was beaming. But I'm sure they'll be happy to discuss fair market rates for accessing their minerals through your property. The silence that followed was deafening. One more thing, I added. James left a letter with his lawyers, detailing his suspicions about certain document irregularities at Harrison Developments, forged signatures, backdated contracts, that sort of thing. I'm having it reviewed, just out of curiosity. The line went dead. Over the next few hours, we finalized the mining agreements. By afternoon, Harrison Developments' stock had dropped 12% as the market digested the news that they'd seized a property worth millions, only to discover they had no rights to its most valuable asset. Robert called around sunset, his voice heavy with whiskey and regret. Kat, I didn't know about any of it. The contract, the minerals. But you still helped her throw me out of my home. I reminded him gently. Actions have consequences, Robert. James tried to teach you that too. A week later, I received a formal offer from Harrison Developments to purchase the mineral rights for twice their estimated value. I had my lawyers send back a single page, a photo of Margaret changing the locks on my front door, with a simple note, not for sale at any price. The beach house itself. I let them keep it. The constant drone of mining equipment, the endless parade of trucks and workers, the total destruction of Margaret's plans to develop the area into luxury condos. That was worth more than the property itself. Sometimes I drive by at sunset, watching the mining operations from my car. The house's weathered shingles are still there, but now they're surrounded by heavy machinery and survey equipment. I imagine Margaret's face every time she has to sign another check to Chen Mining for access to her own property. James would have appreciated the irony. He always said his mother's greatest weakness was her inability to see past surface appearances, whether in properties or people. In trying to take everything from his worthless widow, she handed me the keys to an empire built on what lay beneath. The geological surveys continue to find new deposits. Chen Mining's estimates now put the total value close to $500 million. Margaret still sends occasional offers through various intermediaries, each one higher than the last. I keep them all in a file labeled Property Assessments. James would have enjoyed that little joke. Next to it sits his final gift, a letter to be opened a year after his death. I don't need to open it to remember what he wrote. We'd laughed about it the day we bought the beach house, standing on our weathered deck above our secret fortune. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back, it's letting them take exactly what they want, never realizing they've given you everything in return. Last week, I received an invitation to the Harrison Developments annual shareholders meeting. My new status as owner of their property's mineral rights apparently qualifies me as a strategic partner. I sent my regrets, along with a small gift for Margaret, a jar of beach sand from her property, with a note saying sometimes true value lies beneath the surface. I've moved on to a smaller house further up the coast, away from the noise of the mining operations. But every now and then, I visit my old beach at sunset, watching the mighty machines extract millions in minerals from beneath the house Margaret just had to have. And I smile, knowing that sometimes the best victory isn't in what you keep, it's in what you let others take, never realizing they're giving you exactly what you wanted all along. They say the deeper the betrayal, the quieter the reaction. When my Uncle Marcus tried to destroy everything I built, I didn't scream or cry. I simply reached for the hidden file that would bring our entire family's empire crashing down around his ears. My name is Emily Chen, and at 32, I had transformed Chen Innovations from a struggling software consultancy into an $80 million technology powerhouse. Not that my Uncle Marcus ever gave me credit for it. In his eyes, I was still the naive girl who'd inherited 30% of the company when my father died 6 years ago. The morning everything changed started like any other at our sleek downtown headquarters. I was reviewing our latest quantum encryption contracts when Marcus burst into my office, tablet in hand. "Care to explain this?" he demanded, throwing the device onto my desk. The screen showed our quarterly financials, or rather, the version of them he wanted the board to see. "Explain what, Uncle Marcus?" I kept my voice neutral, though my heart rate picked up. After 18 months of careful investigation, was he finally making his move? "These losses," he jabbed at the screen. $3 million in the last quarter alone. The board meeting is in 2 hours, and I had to hear about this from risk management. I studied his face, the practiced outrage, the calculated concern. Behind his designer glasses, his eyes showed something else. Triumph. "I have a full presentation prepared for the board," I said calmly, thinking of the real numbers safely encrypted on my private server. "We should discuss all the details together." "Oh, we'll discuss them all right." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Every last detail of your incompetence." After he stormed out, I opened my secure messaging app, sending a pre-arranged signal to 3 people. Diana Martinez, our head of cybersecurity, who'd been helping me track the real money trail, James Wong, my contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and Sarah Chen, my younger sister who worked in our legal department without Marcus knowing she was qualified as a forensic accountant. "It's happening," I wrote. 2 hours. The responses came quickly. Servers secured. Evidence backed up. Diana, team standing by. James, legal documentation ready. Sarah. I leaned back in my chair, remembering the day everything started. I'd been reviewing old contracts after my father's death when I noticed something odd. Consulting fees being paid to shell companies, all registered to addresses that didn't exist. It had taken months of careful digging to follow the money, to discover that while I was building our legitimate business, Uncle Marcus had been running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme. The evidence was devastating. $27 million siphoned off through fake contracts, tax evasion through offshore accounts, and bribes paid to secure contracts we should have won on merit. But proving it required patience. Marcus had spent years building his network of loyal employees, all taking their cut of the stolen millions. So I built my own network. Diana, brilliant and incorruptible, helped me track the digital trail. Sarah, overlooked by Marcus because she was just a junior legal assistant, documented everything with forensic precision. And I played my part, the naive niece, too focused on technology to notice the financial manipulation happening around me. The board meeting room filled slowly. 12 members, most of them Marcus's old friends, took their seats around the mahogany table. I noticed how they avoided my eyes, these men who'd watched me grow up, who were about to try to take everything from me. Marcus stood at the head of the table, radiating authority in his bespoke suit. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have a serious situation to address." The presentation screen lit up with graphs showing devastating losses, all carefully manufactured to make my leadership look catastrophic. Under Emily's management, Marcus continued, his voice heavy with fake regret, "Chen Innovations has hemorrhaged money. The numbers don't lie." No, I thought they don't. But people do. 3 million lost last quarter, he announced. Contracts mismanaged, resources wasted, critical decisions delayed. The evidence of incompetence is overwhelming. The board members nodded along. Of course they did. Half of them were complicit in Marcus's schemes. I move that we remove Emily Chen from her position. Effective immediately, Marcus declared. For gross incompetence and mismanagement of company resources. I second the motion, said Howard Pierce, one of Marcus's oldest allies. The same Howard Pierce who had a numbered account in the Caymans that received regular payments from our shell companies. Marcus turned to me, triumph gleaming in his eyes. Emily, do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood slowly, straightening my jacket. Actually, I do, but first, I believe we have some visitors arriving. Right on cue, the boardroom doors opened. James Wong entered, flanked by FBI agents. Behind them came Diana and Sarah, carrying stacks of documents. What is this? Marcus demanded, but I caught the flash of fear in his eyes. This, I said quietly, is what competent management actually looks like. I nodded to Diana, who connected her laptop to the presentation screen. Shall we look at the real numbers, Uncle Marcus? The color drained from his face as the first of the true financial records appeared on screen. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in the shouting. It's in the silence that follows the truth. Sarah stepped forward, her heels clicking on the polished floor. I've prepared copies of the complete forensic audit for everyone. All $27 million of it. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Marcus lunged for the door, but found his path blocked by FBI agents. Howard Pierce slumped in his chair, looking like he might be sick, and I stood calmly at the center of the storm I created, watching 6 years of betrayal finally come crashing down. The next hour in that boardroom stripped away decades of carefully constructed lies. Diana's presentation was devastating in its precision, each slide revealing another layer of Marcus's fraud. Let's start with Project Phoenix, I said, pulling up the contract details. A $15 million consulting project that apparently required 3 separate firms. Interesting that all 3 companies shared the same post office box in Grand Cayman. Marcus had found his voice. This is a witch hunt. She's fabricated everything. The evidence is quite real, James Wong interjected, his FBI badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. We've been building this case for months. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the kickbacks, all of it documented and verified. Sarah stepped forward, her professional demeanor a far cry from the junior legal assistant Marcus had always dismissed. Should we discuss the Watson contract next? The one where $3 million in consulting fees went to a company owned by your wife's brother. Howard Pierce suddenly developed an intense interest in his shoes. 2 other board members were already whispering with their phones, no doubt calling their lawyers. This company, Marcus sputtered, everything we've built. Everything I've built, I corrected quietly. While you were stealing millions, I grew our legitimate business from $10 million to $80 million. Our quantum encryption technology is revolutionizing data security. We have contracts with Fortune 500 companies that we won on merit, not bribes. Diana pulled up another screen. Here's where it gets interesting. The real quarterly numbers show a $5 million profit, not a $3 million loss. The difference? Money siphoned through fake consulting contracts and inflated vendor payments. Marcus tried a new tactic. Emily, please. We're family. Whatever mistakes were made, we can fix this internally. Family? I felt a cold smile form. Like when you tried to blame Dad's death on my distracting him with technical questions during his final days. Or when you told the board I was emotionally unstable after his funeral. The room fell silent. Even Marcus's most loyal allies were edging away from him now. Your father, Marcus began, but I cut him off. My father trusted you. His last words to me were, watch the numbers, Emmy. I didn't understand then. But he knew, didn't he? He was starting to figure it out. Sarah pulled out another document. We found this in Dad's old files. He began tracking the discrepancies, but his illness progressed too quickly. Marcus lunged for the papers, but FBI agents were faster. As they handcuffed him, he made one last attempt. The company will collapse when this gets out. You'll destroy everything. No, I said firmly. I've spent 6 years building real value, real innovation. Chen Innovations doesn't need your fraud to succeed. We never did. The next few hours were a blur of FBI interviews, legal declarations, and shocked board members trying to save themselves. By sunset, Marcus and 3 board members were in custody. Howard Pierce had turned state's evidence, desperate to save himself. In the aftermath, reporters called it one of the most sophisticated corporate fraud exposures in recent history. The headlines wrote themselves. Tech Harris exposes $27 million family fraud ring, and Chen Innovations CEO brings down uncle's criminal empire. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments that followed. The company all-hands meeting where I finally told our employees the truth, promising transparency and real leadership going forward. Sarah's promotion to general counsel, her legal brilliance no longer hidden behind a junior title. Diana's appointment as chief security officer, her loyalty rewarded with a seat at the executive table. The day we launched our quantum encryption platform. Winning contracts on pure technological merit. Marcus's sentencing hearing was 6 months later. I attended, sitting quietly in the back as the judge delivered his verdict. 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Ms. Chen, the judge addressed me directly. Your company's cooperation was instrumental in exposing this fraud. Do you wish to make a statement? I stood looking at my uncle, older now, stripped of his designer suit and arrogance. Only this, success built on lies will always collapse. Real value comes from creating something genuine. The company didn't just survive the scandal, it thrived. Our stock price doubled when investors saw our true financial health. Without the burden of supporting Marcus's fraud, our profit margins soared. We won contracts based on innovation, not bribes. A year later, I sat in my office, the same one where Marcus had tried to intimidate me that fateful morning. Sarah entered, carrying a familiar file. Found this in the old archive room, she said. Dad's original business plan for Chen Innovations. His vision was always about creating real technology, not just profits. I opened the yellowed document, smiling at our father's handwritten notes. One line stood out. The true measure of a business isn't in its numbers, but in its integrity. The quarterly board meeting was starting soon, with new members now, ethical leaders who shared our vision. On my desk sat the latest financial report showing legitimate profits of $12 million for the quarter. Real numbers, real success. Deanna poked her head in. Time for the meeting, boss. I gathered my papers, pausing at the door. The view from my office showed our expanded R&D facility, where teams of engineers were developing the next generation of encryption technology. Real innovation, created by people who were finally free to do their best work. Marcus's old office had been converted into a collaborative workspace. His wall of glory, photos of him with celebrities and politicians, replaced by screens showing real-time development metrics and project updates. Sometimes late at night, I think about that final confrontation in the boardroom. About Marcus's face when he realized his niece, the one he dismissed as naive and incompetent, had been 10 steps ahead of him all along. But mostly, I think about Dad's words. Watch the numbers, Emmy. He taught me that true success isn't about quick profits or clever schemes. It's about building something real, something that lasts. Last week, a reporter asked what I'd learned from exposing the fraud. I thought about Marcus in his prison cell, about the company's renewed success, about the legacy Dad had really left us. I learned that the biggest frauds often hide behind the loudest voices, I said, and that real power isn't in what you take, it's in what you build. Chen Innovations continues to grow, but now it grows cleanly, ethically, built on innovation rather than deception. Every quarter, I review the numbers personally, the real numbers, honoring Dad's last lesson about vigilance and integrity. And in my desk drawer, I keep 2 things. Dad's original business plan and a copy of Marcus's conviction notice. One shows how to build something real. The other shows what happens when you choose lies instead. The choice, as always, is in the numbers. And now, finally, all our numbers are true.